Hello, all you cosmic travelers and wanderers. This is Darlene Grift and K. Melissa Waterman, inviting you to join us today in our episode of Expansion from Within, Exploring Multidimensionality.
Let me introduce you to my friend and dear colleague, Darlene Grift. She is a lifetime experiencer, a medical intuitive, and a multidimensional mediator for over 35 years. She's also an author, an artist, a teacher, and a mentor for spiritually invested people.
And K. Melissa Waterman is my friend and colleague, and she's an intuitive mentor, a spiritual teacher. She also works with energy on many levels. In the past, Melissa has worked with Dr. Joe Dispenza on his research team.
Join us on our journey of meeting multidimensional beings, exploring what it means to be human, and expanding our spiritual evolution. Welcome to another episode. And today we're going to be talking about our vibration, about how we raise it and just what exactly it is. And so, you ready? You ready to start?
Yes.
So our first question is, let's talk about the difference between the words vibration and frequency. Because people, I think, use them interchangeably sometimes.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
I think they can be used. I know if you talk to sound musicians, they have a different opinion about that. But I think for what we're speaking about, becomes too complicated in which one to use. And for those that get upset or whatever and wanting to get the right thing, I believe that they're very similar. And so we can interchange them.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. How is vibration interpreted regarding the physical body? Like, how does the physical body interpret vibration or work with vibration?
In the work that I do, I see vibration as a form of integrity. Everything that has its own vibration. You look at, a wood table as opposed to a metal table. You look at the different kinds of trees. They have an integrity in a willow as opposed to the integrity of a maple or an oak. Okay. So there's a different vibration, a different frequency, a different way that those substances, those objects are in their own integrity. It's not the integrity that we think of as being an emotional, integrity. It's not about that. It's more about how they are held together. What's their consistency?
Structural integrity.
Right. That's what I see as a form of integrity, is the frequency vibration is a form of integrity. So when you move it into the body, each organ has its own vibration. If you look more into the Chinese system, when you look into the acupuncture system, each organ even has a note that goes with it. It's a sound that goes with it. It vibrates, it functions. It's a very different organism, heart from liver, spleen, kidney, all of those are different. So there's a different vibration within each one that coming together forms the human body in its all completeness of the integrity of that body. Okay. The other thing that comes up for me is that the emotional level, like when we bring emotions into our body at a certain frequency, anger has a certain frequency as opposed to being grief-stricken, sad, happy, any of that. But if you have an emotional piece that you haven't, an event, something that has happened to you in a relationship, if you don't deal with it, if you don't process it, if you don't come to a neutrality with it in some way, it stays on the conscious level for a while as a certain vibration. So maybe you think about it more, it comes in and out of your awareness during the day. You become obsessed about it for some people, but then it'll move into the subconscious level, and that'll come out in your dream state or in your meditative state or even in synchronicity. You'll start to see things that remind you of what happened 2 months ago. And if that isn't handled, because that's the universe and their body saying, you better take a look at this. If that vibration isn't handled because it's changed by then to be deeper, if that isn't handled, then it moves more into the physical body. And that's where emotional vibrations turn into illness, disease, discomfort. And that's something to really pay attention to, because we are all vibrational beings. So if you don't handle a vibration that is negative to your body, it'll eventually have a reaction in your body.
With working with the GDV camera, the gas discharge visualization, it's a Kirlian camera. I know I keep mentioning it. This camera has one setting where it shows the human body, what's happening emotionally and what's happening physically. And most of the time, I can see when something's been emotionally distressing, that it has a physical impact on the body. The whole line of reasoning is that physical follows emotion. So if you're emotionally well, then the physical follows the emotional wellness. If you're emotionally unwell, or, like in Chinese medicine, the kidneys are fear, the kidney and bladder are fear, the heart or the lungs are sadness, liver being anger. If the anger isn't expressed in an appropriate way, then the frequency of the liver is affected by the emotion. And either the health of the liver is very good or the health of the liver is starting to be depleted. That's when I first started to really look at the frequency / vibration of everything and how it impacts everything else, right? That it's like the whole place is vibrating, and humans as well. So the next question is, what does it mean to raise our vibration?
Well, I think there's lots of ways to raise the vibration. You go from a state of, let's say unawareness, and you move in any one of the directions, which would be, changing your vibration may mean changing your diet. So when you're not on sugar and coffee and alcohol and smoking and any, addictions, when you're not on that, which lowers the vibration for most people, then that's one way to change your vibration, because it's a lighter way. Drinking enough water is another way, because many people are dehydrated and they don't even know it, because they're drinking other substances and they think that they're getting the fluid that they need, but it's not. So those are two ways of doing that. I primarily work with the 7 seeds and how that increases your vibration, because it's a place of maintenance. It's, the 7 seeds are acceptance and allowance and commitment, trust, truth, co-creativity and integrity. So when you put all that together and you function in any specific situation in your life using those 7 seeds in some way, it takes you into a higher vibration and also can help accentuate neutrality. Mm-hmm. So those would be a few of the tools. I think there's many ways. Intention is huge,
I was just going to say that it seems to me that once you recognize that you're not feeling quite like yourself, or you're not feeling on top of whatever the situation, doesn't mean you have to be super happy all the time. But if you're not feeling it, you can use intention and your free will to help yourself come up a bit. Sometimes you might only come up a little bit, but it's better than staying way low, right? And so I think the emotions play heavily into that. The lower frequency emotions are, anger, sadness, grief, shame, guilt, shame and guilt being at the very bottom. Mm-hmm. And so to just shift them even a little bit ends up raising our vibration, right?
Right. And when you talk about that, it's also the thoughts. They don't just pop, emotions just don't pop out for no reason. There's a process that we have in our head at the moment to pop into an old experience, an old relationship, something that we felt guilty about or ashamed about, that creates the emotion. So watching our thoughts is really important. That undercurrent, that underlying conversation that happens in our heads most of the time. You'll see somebody and you'll be judgmental of them. Oh, that person is this or that, without even knowing them. It's like, oh, look at them. They don't care about themselves. Why? Because they dress different, or they're this or that because they have piercing, or the color of their skin, or any of those negative thoughts. The interesting thing in learning about the brain is that when we say something negative about somebody, the brain doesn't hear it that it's about somebody. It hears it, it's about us.
Right.
So it just reinforces the negative patterns, that lower vibration.
I agree. So if a person's struggling with their low vibration, what can they do? Kind of as a starting point, and then we'll talk about tools just to help everyone with. But what's a good way to start raising a vibration?
First, being aware that you don't like where you are. It's that awareness of, oh, we're vibrational. That's one, right? And there's something that I can do about it.
Mm-hmm.
Then it can move in any number of directions, like we talked about food and exercise and any of those normal things that we might not even look at as it being vibrationally energizing, but yet it is.
Right. Going for a walk outside, being in
Yes.
trees, getting our feet on the earth, all these kinds of things. Sometimes minerals, just
Yeah.
having some Pellegrino rather than plain water can raise our vibration just a little bit.
Well, you bring up a good point because, as a medical intuitive, minerals show up a lot for people,
Mhm.
And it's either the trace mins or the full amount of our 72 minerals. But I think that it's lacking in our food and our water anyhow. So we do need it on might not be much, but we need something, and it will help us to hydrate.
Mhm. Yep, I agree. Are there any other tools that the rest of us, people with higher vibrations, could use to keep their vibration high?
Meditation is a big one, meditation, good company, staying joyful, being grateful, having compassion, all of that, it keeps our vibration up. It keeps us out of that dull place of negativity. Even going to bed and saying, okay, 3 things that I'm grateful for today.
Mhm.
Sets the tone for that whole evening. Sets the tone for where do you connect at night? What are your dreams about?
Mhm. Yep, I love it. So how does having low vibration impact the awareness, the awareness of and the participation with multidimensional beings?
I think it impacts a lot. You first you have the intention and the awareness that you want the connection, right? And then if you're in a medium state of vibration, there's always room for improvement, right? So you want to keep your body, your vessel clean if you want a real connection. And I find that even with myself, if I have a lot of sugar or if I have this, it's really, I can't say difficult, but it takes more energy for me to connect and maintain the connection. So it's important to keep a clean vessel for that. Meditation is always important for that, but it definitely inhibits in some way. And when I was working more in the beginning of working with the multidimensionals, it was really about, a diet for me of what worked. They didn't like the fact that I was any kind of meat that I was eating. In fact, one of the council is avian. And many years ago, 20 years ago, I was tested blood-wise. And one of the things that I was allergic to was chicken. I didn't pay any attention to that because chicken was a mainstay for me because I don't like most other meats, right? I was eating dinner one time when I was working with more frequently with the council. And the blue avian came in as I had a piece of chicken in my mouth that I was having a difficult time trying to swallow. And they said, we don't eat our own flesh. Well, that was it for me. I haven't touched chicken in 5 years. It's that place of the vibration needs to be congruent with them in some way, with the connection, with the intention, with the field. You really need to align yourself in a way if you really want to get the information that feels accurate, because we have a filtering system, right? So we want to be as clear and as clean as we can in getting the information.
Mm-hmm. It makes so much sense, really. It's not rocket science to think that if they're avian beings, that they wouldn't really be thrilled with us eating birds.
No, they weren't so happy with that. And I understood that. And I should have listened to it 20 years ago, when my body said it didn't want it. Right. But I was like, nah, I can't possibly be. Yeah.
What am I going to eat?
Right. Yeah.
Right. So I think that we have actually done all of our questions for today in, I think, somewhat of record time. What do you think?
I think it is
Yeah.
record.
Is there anything else you want to add?
I think keeping our vibration in general, whether you want to connect with multidimensionals or not, is, people they don't say go out and exercise to keep your vibration up. I mean, people don't talk that way.
Mhm.
But in the time that we're living, keeping a higher vibration is going to be important because it's going to be your mental outlook on life, your perception.
Mhm.
It's going to be the action that you take on that. It's going to be the inclusion of how do you participate at a more fuller level with, humans and animals and nature. How do you participate with that? And it's not so easy for some people because they're in the survival mode. But I think if you do your best to remind yourself that you don't have to think that way, you don't have to be that way. Life doesn't have to be a struggle. It can be something different.
Right. And I think what we said before, to intend for it, to intend for happy, healthy, whole, to intend to be the best we can be. When we're calling in support, we're calling in highest order beings. Same thing, we're wanting their high frequency, right? We're
Right.
not asking for astral plane beings. That would be silly. And so we also have to take responsibility that we're not the lowest frequency.
Right. And then
Yeah.
there's integration.
Right.
Because when we connect to those higher beings, there's an integration. They may not come through our physical body and everybody is not a channel, right?
Mhm.
But there is a exchange of frequency. And so that itself helps us to hold that vibration. So if you keep in that consistent conversation in some way, it doesn't have to be every day, but in some way with your higher self, even doesn't even have to be multidimensional. As another being, it can be your higher self in meditation. It just holds us steady at a certain level. I would suggest to people that take a look at, we started saying that everything has an integrity, has a certain vibration.
Mhm.
If you can take a look at how do you perceive yourself in this physical form now, not just your body, but your emotional level, your intellect, how you deal with people, your viewpoint, your perspective, and try to match it with an object, right? So an example for me, I could say many years ago, 30 years ago, don't want to give my age, but 30 years ago, I was more like a willow, right? Somebody would come in and I'd bend to them, and somebody else would come in and I'd bend to that because it was more of a people pleaser. It's more of a, let me just go with this. And where I wanted to be was more of an oak, but I don't want to be so much of an oak that I crack if there's a storm, right? I don't want to be so rigid as that. So when I take a look at my expanse of my life, right, I can see how much I've changed in being different kinds of trees, moving from that willow to more like an oak, but not as rigid as an oak. And I would ask people to take a look at themselves, how they would define themselves now and where would they like to be.
I love the analogy, the metaphor. It's really sweet. The other thing I was thinking about is as vibration lowers, the lower it gets, the more dense things are. So the table has a very low frequency because it's dense, it's material, it's wood or steel, but it's super dense. And the higher the frequency, the less dense. And so it only makes sense that the higher we have our frequency, the more access we'll have to beings that are even more less dense. I don't know. Yeah, just
Yes.
not dense at all, right?
Right.
If you really think about it, it's sort of logical. Like if we're letting our frequency go so low, how could we expect to have contact when multidimensional beings are a higher frequency?
They're a higher frequency, as well as many of them are in the light bodies, which is the very
Highest frequency
that we know about. It's the highest frequency that we know about. Sound could maybe be higher where they're not really in any physical form as far as they're just a sound. But yeah, I think that opens up, like if we say, okay, because we all have a light body somewhere,
Right.
but it's so far removed from this density of 3D that we have a hard time going from the willow to the oak, going from this density to the light body. We just can't conceptualize that at all. So we have to take the little steps to get there, but cleaning up who we are in all capacities of life, thought, thought, word, deed, actions, all of that. If we do that, it will raise our vibration.
It also really, it just strikes me right now that the more we clean up timelines, the more energy we have available to be in a higher vibration, right? Because
Yes.
we're not held back or down by the negative emotions possibly associated with those timelines, right?
Yes. And what I want to say is that those timelines that we existed in, right, that may have unfinished business, you want to, that part of you that's multidimensional wants to be resolved or integrated or released. It's not just sitting there spinning, not having an intention, especially in this time period. It wants that those parts of us want to come forward. In fact, they are coming forward. We're just not so aware of how they're affecting our lives because we're not aware that we're multidimensional.
Right.
So, we get pulled into it in this present day, to get pulled into these different consciousness to say, wow, where did that come from? Or why am I feeling that? Or, all of that comes forward.
Right.
Becomes very confusing and mind-boggling. But if we understand the dynamics of what's happening today, we would understand that those energies, those frequencies from other timelines are coming in to be dealt with.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, is that a good place for us to end today?
I think that's a great place.
I wanted to remind everyone that they can submit questions, and they should do so by going to the soulunion.com website, which is Darlene's website. And there they can, email Darlene and we'll collect them. We only have 1 or 2 questions, so it'd be kind of fun if you guys would ask more questions, and then we'll have even more to talk about. So soulunion.com.
Great. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you. Have a good week.
You too.